legend, a 12-year NBA veteran, but more importantly, the first ever national championship at Villanova University, also in 1985, as well as the Final Four MVP. Coach Pinckney, welcome to Blue Blood on the Main Line. How are you?
Thanks. It's great. It's great to be with you, Jay.
It's great to speak to you. It's always great when we see one another, and it's interesting. A lot of people don't understand that your first year coaching back at Villanova was my sophomore year, correct?
Yeah, you're right. At the time, I was working for the Miami Heat as a scout and a broadcaster, and that summer, I'd been looking to get involved in coaching for quite some time. And that particular summer, I took a job and left Miami in the USBL. And at the same time, one of the coaches from Jay Wright's staff happened to leave. Joe Jones ended up taking a job with Columbia University. And I know Jay, like he was one of your mentors and along with Coach Hill and Coach Wright. I got the opportunity because Joe Jones left Villanova and went to Columbia. And then that summer I interviewed with Coach Wright. I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to go back to college, but he convinced me that it would be a great opportunity and a great way to get involved in coaching. And as it turns out, he was right. I got to coach you and Alan Ray and Randy Foye and Kyle Lowry and a bunch of the Villanova great players. You happen to play with.
I tell you, I remember Coach Jones was such a coach who was paid attention to details, and he was the assistant coach where if you didn't touch the line, he was going to get you. So and I remember he went on. I remember that. And the next year, Coach explains. He says, "Hey Jay, we're bringing in Ed Pinckney. I think this is a great opportunity." Of course, we knew the history. He's very, very big on learning the history, and he will rehash history each and every year. And he brings in all different former legends and players and personalities that's been associated with the program. He makes sure that we know, because our motto is we play for those who come before us. And I remember meeting you, and it was just great. I'm sure I'm not the only one that said it. This can't be your first time hearing it, but you truly were like that gentle giant, and it was like a sense of comfort. You had someone who had the knowledge, the skill set, and actually one of my favorite times, I don't know if you remember the time, it was at the beginning. I was known as a defender, finisher around the rim, and then you took me in the court and you were just telling me to do different moves. And then remember you were doing step back, hit it, knock it down. I was doing all these different post moves. Do you remember that? Do you remember that day?
Well, yeah, I mean, part of our everyday practice plan was to go through an offensive progression. And Jason, you're very humble. You don't talk about your history, but you were, before I actually got the job, Coach Wright talked about this highly touted freshman class and upcoming sophomore class that he had recruited. And he wanted, guys like myself, guys like Coach Hill, who happened to already be on the staff, Coach Gunning, all to get together and try to help you guys. I mean, you and Curtis, Randy and Alan Ray, I mean, that was a very heralded class that he talked about. So, it was great. I had to have my stuff together. We would, as a staff, have these pretty lengthy meetings before we came down on the court. And you guys saw the great part, because Coach Wright was really tough on you guys,
right.
But he was equally as tough on his coaching staff too. I mean, he wanted everything to be perfect before we went on the practice floor. So, it was great. It was a great opportunity to be a part of that, and to take you guys out on the court. I had just recently finished playing with Alonzo Mourning. And, some of the stuff that I went through with you on the court was the same stuff. Alonzo Mourning's a rival, a Georgetown rival,
Right.
but still, it's all great, really good stuff that I had learned from, the Miami coaching staff. And, I tried to implement that in what we did with Villanova.
So speaking on that topic, take people through the mindset of being in the Big East, where, there's going to be a ton of teams, a ton of players to mention, but the three that really jump out to me, we had our Villanova crew, you had Chris Mullin at St. John's, and you had the Patrick Ewing, Ahoya Paranoia, Georgetown squad. And speak to people about what that rivalry is like, and then how does that transform once you graduate and get together. And before I let you speak, because I remember Jameer Nelson, it was us in St. Joe's, and we're bucking heads.
Oh, yeah.
And he graduates, and we were still in school. And there was a sense of, when we on the court, we're rivalry, while we're all in school. But when we graduate, any one of us graduates, and we're anywhere else, we're the Big Five. Was that so? Speak to about rivalry, meeting each other afterwards, the relationship that's formed.
Yeah, no, I'll talk about it's funny, you talk about Jameer Nelson, and there's that sense of Philadelphia basketball that amongst all the Big Five schools, that rivalry is ridiculous. But there's also a sense of being part of something that no other part of the country has, where there are 5, 6 schools, if you include Drexel, which they are in that grouping.
Right, in that group.
It is those. To categorize a game as the Holy War is the games are, right. The Villanova versus St. Joe's games are. So, it's great to be a part of those rivalries, because it prepares you for just about anything as a coach and as a player. And it's funny, like later on, down the line, I coached Jameer Nelson with the Denver Nuggets. And he would always talk about those games that you guys played against them in the Palestra, at St. Joe's, how competitive they were, all the crazy press leading up to those games. It was wild, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. Going back 30 years to the Big East rivalry, a lot of things came together to make those rivalries what they were. The first thing was the coverage that ESPN gave the Big East. It was fantastic. We had what was called Big Monday, and each Monday there was a Big East team that was featured on Big Monday on ESPN, and there wasn't as many networks covering college basketball as they are now. So obviously, St. John's being in New York, Georgetown being in DC, and then Villanova in Philadelphia, you have all 3 major media markets covering these teams. On top of it all, St. John's, very good, and Georgetown was very good. Those 2 teams were each year in and year out, ranked either number 1 or number 2 in the entire country. And Villanova was smallest Catholic school on the main line, competing with those teams. And that, that created a great rivalry. Jay, till this day, when I'm in an airport, somebody randomly will just come up to me and say, man, those Big East games were unbelievable. I remember watching those Big East games, they're all of these games. And I'm not just talking about St. John's or Georgetown, Seton Hall, Boston College. Many of the teams that were in that league at the time were really competitive. But so the networks helped that along. And then in high school, Patrick Ewing, and you just can't take anything away from him. He was the #1 rated player in the country at the time. And so the league as a whole got a lot of publicity because of him. And then Chris Mullin, also a very highly rated player in the country. The league got a lot of publicity because of those two players. And it was, I mean, every game you went out, it was just, I mean, it was a major battle. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but it was unbelievable how the teams used to battle against one another.
So here's the thing, take people through this. Take our Villanova loyalists, our fans, our family, through the lens that you had to see basketball through, playing at Villanova as the small private school, going against these juggernauts who were good. Like you said, they were #1 and 2 year end, because we're accustomed to being that juggernaut now. We're accustomed, though, especially our younger fans, all they know is that juggernaut school, that's my school. That this is what we do. We look forward to a national championship. Take them through the lens of what it was seeing these guys. And also, when you're talking about the media coverage, you and Chris Mullin, you knew each other before college. You're right there. You have seen each other in high school. Then now it's the next level. But he's on this historic program who's rated high. Then you have Patrick Ewing, who everyone knew is #1. And then there's you and Howard Presley and everyone else, right? That was on that team. And you're developing over time. Take them through that.
Well, first I'll say this, because the other two guys you mentioned, Ewing and Mullin, we're all really good friends now. We talk. Both guys have coached on the college level. Chris as a general manager on the NBA level. So we all talk about the rivalries from the past and all of that. I did not know this. In our conversations, both players were recruited at Villanova and took on-campus visits to Villanova.
I did not know that either.
Chris always talks about I love that campus. I actually almost came to Villanova, but because of growing up in New York and Brooklyn, I was obligated to play in front of my family. My family wasn't going to let me go to Philadelphia. Both of those players visited Villanova. But in terms of like what it was like then, again, the Big East was an emerging conference, because at the time, Jay, the big conference was the ACC. Everyone talked about North Carolina, not Duke. NC State had a fantastic, background and history of getting basketball players from all over to come to play there. But certainly North Carolina was the creme of. I mean, they were just the best team and the highly rated team amongst the country. And on top of that, they had Michael Jordan and an array of players. So typically that's who people were talking about when we were watching college basketball in high school, my class. So this emerging league comes out of nowhere, and you get all these guys from New York, from Washington, from Baltimore, from Syracuse. They all stay home and play in the same conference. And that's what really made it very competitive with that grouping. But Villanova hadn't had the reputation that it has now. I mean, there was no pavilion. We played in the Jake Nevin Fieldhouse. That's where we played the majority of our games. So you would get Georgetown, St. John's, and those teams in that small little packed building. And I mean, it was a crazy place to play. We eventually started playing games off campus in downtown in Philadelphia. But, the reputation was grown out of Jake Nevin Fieldhouse and then eventually into the pavilion. And then by the time it got to you guys took it to a whole nother level. Jay, I remember my first year traveling with you guys to Kansas. And I mean, we never did anything like that. We had a nationally televised game your team.
Yeah, I
your
remember that was
team.
when we played against Wayne City.
I mean, that was incredible. That was an incredible ride to sort of see games being played downtown at the Palestra to, to fast forwarding maybe 15 years later. And now here we are, national TV at Kansas. And you guys are starring. I mean, that was an unbelievable thing to see.
And that's interesting because there's a lot of people can get their perspective, but you literally were there when it was smaller. You were there. Like, tell everyone about the story when Coach Massimino, the great coach he was, God rest his soul, with when he asked you about Carolina, and then remember you told me, he said, "Hey guys, where you want to play them?" And then remember you were telling about Jake Nevin. Take us through that.
Well, yeah. I mean, in 1983, we had what I consider like during my run at Villanova, we had our best team. I mean, we were ranked in the top 10 in the country. Our starting center was John Pannone. Our point guard was Stu Granger. And we had a guy who really isn't talked about much, but one of the best leaders I've ever been around in Mike Moakwood. And that was our senior class. And, we had a game scheduled to go down to North Carolina and play against Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, and that crew. Well, in Philly, there's this huge snowstorm, and the snowstorm prevented us and many people from traveling and getting out of Philadelphia.
Right.
So Massimino was weighing whether or not to go play this game because the game was just going to get canceled and we were not going to play it. And he talked about, look, this is our only opportunity to get on the national stage. Gary McLean and Dwayne McLean, they would have cut off their arm to play against Michael Jordan at the time. I mean, they wanted that matchup. So he got all of us, in the office. He asked the senior group, did they want to chance it, leave campus, get on a plane, and go down to North Carolina? The accommodations probably wouldn't be the best, but, we can just cancel the game or try to get a chance to get down there. We went down there and eventually won that game. And those three guys starred in the game, especially, Pannone and Granger. They played great. And that really showed me, when you have opportunities to, do something that big, I mean, you got to go do it. You just have to go do it. And that sort of put our program, we were looked at a lot differently after that game. We won that game at North Carolina. And Massimino, I mean, if we had said no to that game, I think he would have overridden the no and still made us go down to North Carolina anyway, because he was so competitive as a coach. I mean, he really wanted to play against, any of the blue blood schools at the time. He loved those opportunities.
It's great. Because Coach Wright always makes sure we know a lot about the stories and history for a specific reason. Because I said, you talked about the Kansas game. And I remember when we played Kansas, because that took things to a whole nother level because we started having the home and home. And it created the Villanova-Kansas rivalry that lasted today. It started on that one. And I remember the next year when it went to another level, there was a snowstorm again.
Yeah.
We played downtown, and Alan Ray went off. I remember that game. He went off. I was injured that second game. And Randy played well, Kurt played well. And, we are pretty much, the rest was history from that point in terms of building. My question for you would be, you played, you came back on the other side of the bench, you saw the evolution, you conquered, I should say you played, you conquered. Let's not forget, you won the first national championship, the first. It's always hard to get the first one. You won that. And not only did you win that, it wasn't like you just participated. You was the MVP for a reason. And it wasn't a situation where it was just a matchup it was a matchup made in heaven from some team from the West Coast and your East Coast style of when you had to overcome a juggernaut in Georgetown, right? And I know that this has been covered so many different times. There's been books been written. Give us some insight. Give us a story or a different perspective that hasn't been spoken about.
Well, that might be a little tough because, you know, each April 1st of each year, the members of that team till this day, and it's been over 30 years now, the members of that Villanova team still get together, still somebody creates a text thread. Chuck Everson in particular, I mean, he's sort of the main go-to guy for contacting our group.
Right.
But everybody, on April 1st, they remember that day till this day. And, you know, we've been fortunate because for the last 3 years, Villanova's been involved all the way to the end and into the national championship game. So we get a thrill out of watching the current teams play. But I think more than that particular game that happened back in 1985, it's the relationships that are built from then that we maintain now. That's the biggest thing that we all cherish, as being part of that group. All the guys still talk to this day. All the guys, I mean, it's not just April 1st. I just yesterday talked to Chuck Everson. Chuck Everson talked to me about Gene Waldron and a podcast they're doing, with their Georgetown group. And he was just part of their podcast. And, it's the relationships that a game like that create that you can maintain now that really you hold special in your heart. And, Coach Massimino isn't with us today, but what he created, what Jay Wright continues to maintain with the group from 1985, 30 years ago up until now is amazing. And, that's my biggest takeaway from that particular game. Like wherever I go, I played 12 years in the NBA, Jay. Right. Nobody says to me, hey man, you remember like you guys played the Celtics and, Rick Mahorn and Lampier were, nobody brings that up. Right. Nobody. They talk about Villanova and it's great. It's great to have been a part of that.
Yeah. I'll say the same thing on my part where I think Villanova, I know to be different in terms of the camaraderie that the players have, but the authentic relationships that are being built, because it's two things that stick out. Each class stays in touch with each other. Each class definitely stays in touch with each other. I just got off the phone with Alan Ray yesterday. I spoke to Randy the week before. I speak to Kurt at least twice a month. Chris Charles, we actually even have our own little group on Instagram.
Can I just say one thing? How is Chris Charles still playing basketball?
Man, Chris, so he endured multiple injuries, but you know what he does? He really, really works on his body all off season. And Chris is an interesting story because he literally niched out a long career, successful career, playing abroad. And he's been doing very well. I think last year I know he got defensive player of the year. He might have been MVP again. He got multiple MVPs of the year. His story is amazing. And that's something that needs to be talked more about.
I love it because I love to travel, and especially overseas. Anytime I get a chance to be a part of something that's overseas, I'm all in. Mm-hmm. Chris Charles has been around the world like 10 times. I live through his Facebook page. He's got all these amazing pictures of the world and what he's been exposed to. It's
experiences. He told me, I remember when he was in Lebanon and he said, practice got to get pushed back. And I said, tell me how it is. Like, what do they teach you? He said, they teach you how to travel, what to do. And I said, what do you mean by that? Go in detail. And he said to me, look, people were taking a bus and a bus blew up. There was a bomb. And then he said, you know what? He goes, you know what, Jay? He said, that's why they said we got to drive our cars, do not take any public transportation. But then he said, hours later, you know what people did? Got on the next bus and continue working. He said, you got to work. You got to keep moving. So he has amazing life experiences through his time traveling. So I want to stay on one thing. I want to add one thing and then move on to your NBA career, because people are going to get a chance to hear about it today. But the other thing about Villanova that stands out to me is no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what time of day it is, once someone finds out that you're a fellow Wildcat, the way we embrace each other, even if there's an age difference, gender difference, it's amazing. And how I found out, I remember I was working for the Spurs at the time in the G League as assistant coach. And remember, we met up in Minnesota, and you guys had Craig Smith. And I remember seeing other players that I played college ball with, seeing their teammates that they were co-stars, not on the same team, but co-stars. And they kind of just were like, hey, what's up? And kept it moving. And I remember I was good associates with some of the players, and I said, hey, isn't that your teammate? Isn't that your guy? And he goes, yeah, I see him. With us, it's totally different. Like even when I see Malik Waynes at the Summer League, and if I see Stokes around, even Mo Sutton when he was with Oklahoma City Blue, when I was with the Spurs, we embrace each other. It was like, hey, you would think we were literally family, and you've seen your family member. And I think that's unique about Villanova. But as promised, wanted to go into your 12-year career, right? Let's talk about your 89-90 Celtics year. So you're with still, Larry Bird is still dropping numbers. So is Kevin McHale, Dennis Johnson was on that team, others as well. Give us, how was it in practice? Give us a Bird story. Give us something, because I'm sure he did stuff all the time. How was it in practice with him? Do you remember something special to give us a Larry Bird story?
Well, that experience was really, it was great for me, because it taught me really what the NBA was about. Everybody talks about having great veteran leadership, people who sort of set the example on a daily basis. And those guys did that for me. I was in the NBA 4 years before that. I played in Phoenix, Sacramento, and then eventually got traded to Boston. But a couple of combinations that helped me really excel and probably play my best basketball that I played in the NBA with Boston. The head coach of the Celtics at that time was Chris Ford. Mm-hmm. Chris Ford happened to be a Villanova legend.
Yeah.
And, he was named the head coach. So I had someone in a coach that really believed in my skill level and gave me great opportunities to excel out on the court. On top of that, every single day in practice, I had to play against, as you mentioned, Bird, McHale, and Parrish,
right.
Legendary Hall of Fame front line. And, every day, because McHale came off the bench, he was, year in and year out, one of the six men of all time coming off the bench. So I got, at sometimes I would get the start, and I would play in the front court with Bird and with Parrish. Mm-hmm. But in practice, I had to play against Larry Bird. And as a competitor, when you're matched up against someone who's touted as the best, you have pride as an individual player.
Right.
You're not just gonna go into practice and lay down. And this dude used to come into practice every day and go, Pick, sorry, I got your ass today. And I would be like, nah, that's not gonna happen. He'd be like, yeah, nah, yes it is. Don't take it personal, but but I'm really gonna kick your ass. And that's how practice would start off, Jay.
Right.
And I would be like, all right, let's go. So like Chris Ford because Larry was Larry,
Right.
would run most of the offense through him.
Right.
So if there was a particular set that didn't go right, he would say, stop, run that back again. And I'd be like, nah, let's keep the play going, man.
Right.
Come on, he didn't score that time. And Chris Ward would be like, no, we're not looking for that option on the play. We want to get into the second and third part of the option of our play because, they might defend that. And of course, it would go right back to Larry, and Larry would score and talk. This dude, you want to talk about trash?
Tell it.
Trash, man. It was unbelievable. And I'll tell you a crazy story. Mark Polanski, one of my Villanova teammates,
yes, remember him,
would come to Celtic practice. He was a New England guy, and he'd occasionally come to practice.
Okay.
And Mark said to me one day before practice, he said, "Man, I want to just shoot against Larry. You think I could do it? Like, think I want to just challenge him in the shooting."
Right.
And Mark Polanski is one of the all-time shooters at Villanova, and I would just tell him, like, Mark, you're not beating Birdie. I'm telling you, don't bother me with this stuff. You're not gonna win in the shooting contest. But I mean, that's how my practices were every day. I mean, it was great to compete against those guys and learn what it meant to be like a high-level pro.
So he literally would come into practice. No, because we all as ex-players, we all know those days when like you feeling it, and he'll just come in and be like, "I'm sorry." Just tell you I'm sorry.
And then, like, I mean, my son, right? My son Shay.
Which one, Austin or Shay?
So like, they would be like, well, it would be Shay and Spencer. They'd be like, hey, Dad, let's go trick-or-treating. Come on, we'll go by Parrish's house. We'll go by Bird's house. We'll go by McHale's house. Right. I'd be like, I'm not taking y'all by Larry's house, man. There's no way. I don't want to hear his trash talking. We can go by the other two guys. But, I mean, that guy talked more trash and, would back it up. And he
give us something he'll say. Give us like something that you can remember, like something specific.
I mean, the stories are, I mean, he'd go by an opposing team's bench. And I mean, and it was never a team that was a bad team. Mm-hmm. It was always a good team. I mean, I can remember a particular game we played against the Clippers. At the time, the Clippers had just gotten Dominique Wilkins. Mm-hmm. He was recovering from a major surgery. I think he had torn his Achilles, but he was having a great year. And it was a better than normal year for the Clippers. And we were out there, close game. Dominique Wilkins is doing his thing. Bird is having an okay game, but it's tight in the end. Bird tells the coach, I'm going to get the ball in the corner and I'm going to shoot a three and the game is over. He told the
opposing team. He's telling them, right.
So I'm sitting there, I'm like, come on. I mean, you hear these stories, but they can't be true. Mm-hmm. In the corner, three, doesn't even look, just walks right off the court and into the locker room. And everybody's like, it was like a normal occurrence, Jay. But that was one of my first years on the team. And I'm saying to myself, like, the dude just told the opposing team where he was going to shoot the ball from. And everybody was like, yeah, he does that all the time. It's that's just what he does. Yeah. And it was incredible to watch him play and to witness his greatness, man. It was unbelievable.
I think a lot of people don't realize, I have my little debate groups I'm a part of, that how good Bird really was. They really don't realize how good Bird was in terms of, he didn't just shoot, right? How was it in practice? It wasn't just guarding a shooter. The guy would put it to the floor. He would dunk you. Right,
he knew how to play. I mean, it's and I'm going to ask you a question about the Jordan LeBron debate, because personally, I mean, that's your class, right, in terms of LeBron. But no, I think when the idea of the consummate power forward or player comes up, and as years have gone on, he sort of gets pushed by the wayside. But he's, he and Dr. J, to a degree, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Those were the guys that I watched when I played and when I was coming up. And I think in some breath, like those three are done a disservice because it's not talked about how great they actually really was, especially Kareem. I mean, Kareem still has a ton of records and was an all-time great still, obviously, but not many people talk about Bird, and I think that's a disservice.
Yeah, I agree.
But I got to ask you about, because this debate, this LeBron Jordan debate, and you saw Jordan, but how do you feel about that? How do you feel?
Let me get the disclosure. I am Team LeBron. I'm shamelessly Team LeBron. Even though I have great respect for MJ, regardless how you feel about it, I would say, there's certain things that is undeniable. You can't push, you can't eat, like how some people try to forget and bury Kareem. You can't do that to Mike. You talked about the Big East and how the emergence of it, right? There will never, ever, ever, you just say never say never, never be a player like MJ. When I say like MJ, not only from a talent perspective, you got to remember the NBA was going global. So here it is, the NBA is going global. You will never have, in the game of basketball, you'll never have a player who is the face of a sport that is taking over the world globally.
The other argument is the one that everyone argues is the 6 championships. I know LeBron has been to 11 finals. Mm-hmm. He's won 4, but I just, having competed against both, mm-hmm. Jordan on the court and LeBron coaching against him, you're splitting hairs because what he just did this past year is amazing. But I just, the ferocity that Jordan would play with on a nightly basis is, I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, even when considering and watching LeBron play, he just would try to destroy. I mean, didn't matter. You got his best every night. We can agree to disagree.
I mean, Jordan, you can go either way with these guys. I think,
by far. But I want to ask you one more question about like just the league and some Villanova players in the league, because like you coached in the NBA and you got a chance to coach some great players. I still call you and ask you about individual players. You with the Phoenix Suns, but like, do you have one Villanovan that you like to watch in the NBA? Is anybody you like particularly watch?
I wouldn't say one, but I remember when Jalen first got in, I wanted to see him do well. Yeah. Obviously, I've been watching Mikal because I'm still in Phoenix. Yeah. He's with the Suns. And I get very excited about his development. But, I personally, if I had to pick one, over the years, it's always been Kyle. I played with him.
Yeah.
Kyle didn't have, nothing was handed to him. Nothing. Kyle, he embodies, if you think about that attitude of Villanova, where it's the player who you don't see everything laid out. It doesn't look like he has a raw talent above everybody else, but he has skill. He's skilled. His skill set needs to be respected. But his effort and knowledge of the game and his willingness to play the right way makes him stand above the competition. That's why I get off watching Kyle. And when I say he's like a Villanova guy, where he's just no matter what critiques people have and say, well, he's not really that great of a shooter, or he's not this, not that. He constantly has to prove people wrong, and he constantly keeps doing it.
Jay, like when you watch him, because again, I coach against him and have watched him emerge into this play. Like, and I mean, you guys, you were teammates. Right. Could you have ever imagined when he first set foot on campus, this guy potentially has the chance to go to the Hall of Fame? Did you ever?
No. When Kyle got there,
it's amazing.
No. I remember because here's the thing. You remember we came in with the class. I came with the class was Rainey, Kurt Allen.
Yes.
Everyone you talk about the evolution. Everyone was saying I was supposed to be a one and done, and then it was like surgery. Then all of a sudden, Kurt was slotted to go first round. Kurt was gone. Junior, he was gone. Right? He tears his ACL. So that happened. Then Randy emerged, and Randy was there, but then Randy was the man that was like, all right, Randy's gonna be that lottery pick. Randy's gonna be that man. A-Ray is noteworthy, and he'll make the league one way or another. And the year ends. We go to Elite Eight. The year ends. No one mentioned Kyle or anything. And we're all talking about what the agents are saying. Kurt is talking with us. It was me, Kurt, Randy, Allen, and we were in the dorms talking about this. And each and every day, it's getting closer because we're seniors. It's getting closer to, all right. So Rand, how you doing? And you see the new people around everyone because they're preparing for the NBA. All of a sudden, you heard Kyle leaving. We was like, Kyle? Yeah, Kyle's leaving. Yeah, I mean, it was like Kyle's leaving. We were like, Kyle. And I remember his player profile that teams love the fact that he can disrupt another team's offense defensively.
Tough.
That's what got him in.
All you guys were tough. I mean, Coach Wright crafted the practices that way, but you're right, man. I mean, all you guys, and we had come off that amazing run, where all Kurt, and you mentioned Curtis getting hurt, but yeah, all you guys were right there, and it just till this day, I enjoy watching Josh Hart as well too. He's one of my favorites. Yeah. He actually, when I'm sitting on the bench, he'll come over sometimes and go 1, 2, 3 attitude.
Josh has a great personality.
He got a great personality, man. He's awesome and stuff. But yeah, I marvel at all the guys, and I got a chance to coach Randy in Denver.
I remember,
as a Nugget and stuff. But yeah, we all marvel at how well Kyle has done and his progression, and how he continues to get. Because the Raptors are, I mean, each and every year they're in the championship conversation, and Kyle's become Mr. Raptor.
Right.
Now. It's amazing.
Right. He's arguably obviously. When I say arguably, because I'm biased,
well,
he is the greatest Raptor. Think about it. It was
that's Vince Carter, right? Tracy McGrady. Right. He's above all.
Carter Rosen's been there and been doing well. And had his 1 year there. Kyle Lowry is the greatest Raptor. And I think that's amazing. And it's a testament again to what Villanova brand basketball is. It's playing basketball the right way, playing to the best of your ability, and finding a way to overcome any obstacles, no matter what. And that's what Kyle is. So let's end on this. Tell everyone the Kareem story. Remember when you blocked the shot, then you got frustrated, and you go. Tell us.
Nah, look. Growing up in New York, right? I mean, there's all kinds of great players, and he's the greatest, right? He's got. Till this day, he's still got all the high school records, rebounds, points, the whole deal, right? So I get to the NBA, and he, at that time, might have been in his 16th or 17th year. So we're playing the Lakers, and he goes up for a hook shot, and it's, middle of the second quarter or whatever. And I'm like, man, I'm going to get this, man. I'm throwing this shot into the third row. So he gets into his hook, and I come over from the weak side, and I throw it into the stands, right? And he just starts running the other way. And everybody starts running the other way. And I look at the official, I'm like, you called goaltending on that? And he's like, yeah, that shot is impossible nobody in the history of the game has ever blocked that shot. It's goaltending. You see everybody running the other way, you go down there too. And I just remember come on, man. This is, I got that clean and fair and square, but testament to that shot and how great that shot was. I mean, it wasn't goaltending, but
it wasn't goaltending. Yeah,
I didn't have the respect at that time to get that call.
I'm with you. Only 2 people in history, blocked that shot. Will Chamberlain, and Pinckney.
I tell that story to my kids. I'm sticking to it. It was not goaltended, but it was.
Coach, I'm with you. It wasn't goaltended. Hey, Coach Pinckney, I really appreciate you joining Blue Blood on the Main Line, especially as our first guest. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you personally for the role you played in my life, being that mentor, being there through especially the tough years at Villanova. Like I think back on those times all the time, and I know you know, but you don't know to the extent of just the comfort that you were. Like I felt, because being a big man, we live in different worlds than the rest of our teammates, even though we're part of the same team. And I felt like I had someone that knew me, my genetic makeup as a person, and that can hear me in a way that no one else hears me. And I appreciate now being a coach for so many years now and mentoring young men. I appreciate the sacrifice and the time that you spent, because I know that I remember you had to get there. You guys had to get there 5-something, 6 o'clock in the morning, spend all day, practice, post-practice,
breakfast,
coaches after practice.
Breakfast with the crew.
Say it again?
I said breakfast with the crew. You, Marcus.
Everything, and then after everything was over, and we're talking 8, 9 at night. I remember the times, I had to do my rehab, even the post-practice rehab for all the injuries I had. And, we'll sit in the car and you'll just keep talking and mentor me. I appreciate each and every day, each and every hour, each and every second. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you on the court soon.
All right, man. Congratulations and thanks.
And hopefully, one thing I did want to add in, you've been doing whatever, so everyone know, I know you've been doing a great job. You mentioned the coaching stops. You are a scout with the Rockets.
Yeah.
And I know you've been hard at work, preparing for this next upcoming season. And just so you know, there's always been talks in the basketball world, and there's expectation. Everyone still has great hope, great expectation that you're gonna get your just due day to be a head coach, if that's the NBA or if that's college, because you deserve that. You put in more than the required work. You're more than qualified. And you know what? Timing is everything. Maybe the basketball guys are waiting for that squad to align if you get the opportunity. So when you do, you take off, hit the ground running.
Well,
so thank you,
Jay.
Good luck.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. God bless you.
All right.
All right. V's up.
All right.
Yeah.